His teacher blamed the Ukrainian government. Ukraine isn't killing dogs, it's killing people, she cried. Why is everybody silent? Why do our children have to die, leaving us to pray?
This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
Eastern Ukraine is holding 48 hours of mourning after 2 children were killed by shelling as they played football. 4 others were injured when the artillery shell hit a school sports field in the eastern city of Donetsk on Wednesday. The school was in the same district as the airport, where fighting between rebels and pro-Kiev forces continues. The father of one of the boys said around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, my eldest son Andrei was killed, as well as his schoolmate and friend Danila. They went to school together, he said. Human rights charity Amnesty International said the deaths must be impartially investigated and if found to be a war crime, those responsible brought to justice. The mother of the other boy said he was 11 years old. They were playing football when the shelling started and they were hit.
The international community should work to de-escalate, and the Minsk agreement at this moment is the best opportunity we have, and is the best set of rules that we have to work on to create more stability on the ground.
Both separatist and pro-Kiev forces accuse each other of breaking the ceasefire agreement signed in the Belarusian capital Minsk in September. Russia says it's begun a criminal inquiry into the deadly shelling.
Russia didn't respond immediately to Kiev's latest accusations, but said it still supported a ceasefire deal. But Friday's funerals for 2 teenagers killed in Donetsk only strengthen a feeling that the Minsk Accord is increasingly in tatters. The boys' teacher blamed the Ukrainian government. Ukraine isn't killing dogs, it's killing people, she cried. Why is everybody silent? Why do our children have to die, leaving us to pray? The school football pitch where a mortar shell killed Andrei Elisev and Daniil Kuznetsov isn't far from rebel positions which have often come under government fire. Kiev denies responsibility, blaming planned provocation by separatists.
You need to understand, I've given you some observations, but Ukraine is like Canada, and these eastern provinces are like Quebec. And what's going on is like if Ontario and the rest of Canada was killing school children, bombing schools, and took over the airport in Quebec, in Montreal, and they're using that as a point to shell and kill civilians all around because they speak. The whole thing started with the overthrow of the elected president. Part of Ukraine speaks Russian and part speaks more towards a Polish language. Ukraine is a relatively new country formed out of groups of people. What exists today, and part of it used to be part of Russia. They've always been Russian. Ukraine was the heart of Russia before they moved from Kiev to Moscow for safety. But that's besides the point. The terrible things going on. Obama overthrew an elected president, and the news isn't coming through. This wasn't on Fox News. Nothing. What's going on? They're killing civilians. It's like Canada bombing Quebec. Look at these things. Here's the woman that Obama put in charge to overthrow the government and set up this fascist government that's killing because, and there's a reason behind it, which I won't give here, about Obama's hate for it has to do with homosexuality, his hate for Russia and Putin, that this whole story is distorted and civilians are being massacred. Listen to this.
We haven't been able to independently verify this, but this is an alleged phone call between the US Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs, Victoria Nuland, and the US Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, which has been posted up on YouTube. We've got no way of knowing exactly where the call came from, but it appears to be a conversation going over a plan to deal with the crisis in Ukraine. Vitaly Klitschko, who's one of the opposition leaders, is one of the first topics of conversation. Nuland and Pyatt are heard discussing whether or not he should be included in any future Ukrainian government.
So I don't think Klitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tanyabok and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
They go on to say that Arseniy Yatsenyuk will be prime minister and that there's no way that the two will get along.
The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff.
Next up comes the discussion about getting US Vice President Joe Biden and the UN involved at the right time to help out, and a stinging comment directed at the EU for their own lack of involvement.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, fuck the EU.
There's a couple of things. This does appear to show how our governments meddle in the affairs of other states, which again raises the question about whether or not we have any right at all to do that. And then there's the irony of it all, given the Edward Snowden revelations. It's apparently a conversation between very high-level US officials being listened into and leaked.
This video clip was from the setup to overthrow the elected Ukrainian government, which took place last February. Since then, they've been murdering under the name of democracy. And you won't hear it on Fox News, even though they degraded the European Union defense of the human rights of this part of Ukraine. They had outlawed them. It's like outlawing speaking French in Quebec. They did that to these people when Obama overthrew the elected government and put in these fascist, they really, Sloboda and right sector have their roots going back to joining the Nazi Party when it invaded, along with the Muslims from Chechnya that flocked to join Hitler and kill Jews. But that's a whole nother thing. This setup of Obama and how he has control, why Fox News won't report the truth, why none of them will report. It's unbelievable. And here he can go and choose judges to make marriage between a man and a woman unconstitutional. The right judges are being selected by his people. What's happening to America? Here in Russia, I can get through to the government about corruption and people are prosecuted. But it's who's at the top. Russia has been degraded terribly by communism, women's liberation, the wars, but they have a leader that will do his best to clean up corruption if it comes to his attention. And so with Medvedev, I've thought the corruption of people trying to bribe me here and had the help I needed. And another, you could read on my website about they even fired the president of Stravropol Region over a thing that I helped bring to the attention on the corruption that are building one of the multi-million-dollar things going on subsidizing apartment renovation, and it was corrupted, and we fought it. But Obama's doing something terrible, and we don't have any politicians overdo it. I would go into that in more depth, and I understand more than I have the time to tell, or more than you want to hear. But I'm showing you these observations. Wake up what's happening. They're killing children. It's not safe to live in places that Obama wants to throw his garbage on because they protested against homosexuals. Wake up. But the truth is they didn't protest against homosexuals. They protested against indoctrinating children into homosexuality and trying to propagate that amongst children. What in fact the Russian law said is not to propagandize, not to children, to protect children from being indoctrinated into homosexual behavior. That's a private matter and it's not for children.